Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Rabbi zidni ilman nafi'a wa amalan saliha. Distinguished lecturers, speakers, students, my brothers and sisters, and especially our guest speaker today, Mr. Mughees Shaukat. Welcome you all to this special session on climate change and anti-fragility of tech-driven Islamic finance. Usually, as you know, this Islamic Economics Association الاقتصاد الإسلامي في كلية الشريعة والدراسات الإسلامية بجامعة الكويت is promoting Sharia standard programs, models and standards through arranging many lectures, talks, forums, trainings, and so on. Normally, our programs and these forums covers a wide range of areas in Islamic banking and finance, like, as you know, Islamic marketing, Islamic insurance, Islamic microfinance, Islamic banking, Islamic capital market, equity market, and so on. We are also now hosting some programs and talks on specific topics of these areas, such as Islamic sukuk, retail and corporate banking, and so on. So this is just to help Islamic banking and Islamic Sharia compliant model or standards to be widespread within the Muslim communities and also within the other communities, as we are now seeing that Islamic banking and financial model is rapidly spreading globally. So Nadal Iqtisad Islami is working hard to promote this Sharia compliant financial model. So a part of that, today's lecture on climate change and anti-fragility of tech-driven Islamic finance. So we are very much honored to have today's speaker, Mr. Mughees Shaukat, who is Islamic banking advisor, Bank Nizwa Oman, and fintech and digital banking specialist, MIT, US. Mr. Mughees is a global financial strategist and policy advisor, fintech specialist in US, and also vice president of the IAPEF Kyrgyzstan. He is also a pioneer, head of Islamic finance, CBFS under Central Bank of Oman, and vice chairman of the accounting and auditing organization of Islamic Financial Institutions AOFI Education Board, Bahrain. Mr. Mughees is also vice chairman advisory board, Fangel Global Incorporation Canada, and he is also member advisory board of Global Brand Ambassador as well, the Halal Chain, and a member Society of Advancement of Socioeconomics, France. He is a member of the Western Economic Association International, US, also a member of the Blockchain Society Oman, and certified Sharia advisor and auditor, AOFI. Mr. Mughees is a thought leader and prolific author, renowned public speaker, and prominent contributor in local and global policy and strategic affairs. Under his leadership and global contributions, Mughees made CBFS become a global entity, winning GIFA award by the President Islamic Republic of Pakistan. He is also awarded as FinTech Leader of the Year 2020 from Turkey and featured on the front cover of a top international financial magazine as a global personality, a strategist, and thought leader. Mughees is a PhD scholar in economics and finance with a specialization in entrepreneurship and policies for entrepreneurial ecosystems. He also holds MSc in Islamic finance from UK. Previously, he has worked as an assistant researcher in Islamic banking and finance in INSEAD, Malaysia, and ISRA, Malaysia as well. Mughees Shaukat has published around 50 articles and research papers, has so far delivered over 100 keynote addresses and policy talks, expert sessions globally. So we are very much honored to have Mr. Mughees Shaukat to deliver today's speech on climate change and anti-fragility of tech-driven Islamic finance. Please welcome Mr. Mughees.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, thank you very much, Brother Muhyiddin, and for this very kind and generous interview. I did know this much stuff about me, and you have actually overwhelmed me from my own introduction. As a matter of fact, I put a lot of expectation pressure on my shoulders, and through this session, and I would try my best to live up to that expectation, inshallah ta'ala. So again, thank you very much to you, and thank you again to the to this Islamic Economic Club under your aegis and all the stakeholders who run this club. I mean, I'm always honored to be a part of this. This is, I think, my third or fourth session, I'm guessing. Brother Mohammed, correct me if I'm wrong, to impart my thought process and share my thought process on the very learned select group of audience that join us, every time in all the efforts or all the sessions that are arranged by this club. So deeply honored. I feel very glad to be a part of it again. And I feel equally glad that I'm going to discuss an extremely crucial and the need of the hour topic, which is already a red alert and termed as Code Red by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. Just recently, it is termed as Code Red for humanity. So this is how urgent knowing about this topic is. Addressing is baden, but knowing the urgency, knowing the seriousness of this topic, getting yourself aware of this topic, and then also not only getting yourself aware and alert about this very pressing, very pressing issue in an emergency basis, but then also trying to see how Islamic finance can offer solutions in terms of course, not avoiding it. We can't avoid now climate change, but at least managing it better for us than what is envisaged. So I'm very glad that this platform has, as Brother Muhammad Muhyiddin was mentioning, that this platform caters an array of interesting topics, core and non-core, new, futuristic topics. That is the beauty of this platform, that the knowledge that it creates in the overall setup of Islamic finance, not only the experts that it brings on the platform, but also the content it produces on that platform. And I'm very happy that the new addition to this platform would be this topic, and this pressing topic, discussing climate change, and on top of it, discussing climate change with the relevance of what Islamic finance can do. It's such a unique topic, particularly for this upcoming youth of Islamic finance, who are going to be the torchbearers of the model of Islamic finance 2021 onwards, that is going to operate in this new normal world, which is also going to be, of course, dictated by climate change alongside technology disruption, post-pandemic scenarios, and multipolarity, and so on and so forth, including UN SDGs. So I'm very glad and I'm very honored, and I want to share my slides over here, very quickly, so that, people know what we are talking about. Let me know if you can see my slides, if that's okay, guys.
Yes, you can see, yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So basically, this is what the unwan, yani this is what the title of the topic is, and I'm going to not only talk about climate change and its relevance to the relevance of Islamic finance in mitigating and adapting to it or absorbing the shocks relatively better, but I'm also going to touch on the notion of anti-fragility, and I will explain in as much simple terminology as I can, and Allah gives me tawfiq, inshallah ta'ala, that how this anti-fragile nature of Islamic finance makes it a better shock absorbent to the risks and damage, upcoming damage of climate change on offer to this very tightly knitted, globalized, post-pandemic, technology-driven, SDGs-driven, multipolar world. So it's so important. And guys, whatever we plan, whatever we deem fit for the future, even for the present, if climate change effects are not tackled well, we are not saying we can avoid that now, it's already on our shoulders. But if we are unable to manage it well or tame it well, let me use this word, tame it well. We can't tame nature, but let me, for the sake of argument, use it. Whatever we plan, even for generations, it will not see the day of the light as we envisage it. So here I am trying to create this basic awareness. I can go high end with this topic. I can go really deep. I can go really technical. I can go really policy oriented, really high end, as I mentioned, with regards to explaining this topic. But my falsafa is, let's get the base clear first. Let's get the basic awareness about this topic with regards to this title. It's a three-pronged topic. It's a three-edged topic. It's climate change, Islamic finance, on top of it, anti-fragile Islamic finance that we are talking. So if we have this basic fitra awareness of this topic on our hands, then slowly, perhaps, inshallah ta'ala, if the club invites me for other sessions, I can then go one step, two step, three step further, and so on and so forth, in just making sure that this topic is well understood and well managed in terms of it, its mitigation and its adaptation towards it. So let me start very quickly. As always, these days, whenever I speak anywhere, I would want to make sure that we first pay our deepest sympathies, express our deepest sympathies, commiserations, condolences to all the people who have suffered from this menace of COVID-19. It's been there almost now 2 years. Aftershocks are yet to be observed, because first we need to control it and then see and then try and reverse and relive our normal lives pre-pandemic and whatever it was. So it's still there. It's still there. Even if it's controlled, the aftershocks will still remain for at least 3 or 5 years to come. So our deepest sympathies to people who got affected from this menace. Our condolences to people who suffered or lost their loved ones, lost their lives due to this. And our deepest profound appreciations to all the frontline health workers, be it medical staff, doctors, even governments, military people, everybody who, scientists, individuals, normal people who have been there as a shield to try and protect humanity from this menace. So our profound appreciations to that. And look what this menace has done already. Talking about there is a health side of it, there is a health disaster to it, but at simultaneous, tightly linked, is the economic disaster too, and what this has already done. And this is, as I mentioned, we are still in sort of controlling phase of this corona pandemic. This is what the situation currently is like. And as I mentioned, we are yet to see the post-pandemic nataj, the post-pandemic results, because the first phase is to control it, tame it, and then get out of it, and then try and reverse its effects and go back to a pre-COVID normality stage and see what are the aftershocks and what are the dents it has already done in a post phase. But this right now, folks, over here is what the economical damage it has done. It's complete, utter blockage. The world is now slowly starting to open up, but it'll take time. I mean, let alone just talking about the tourism or the travel industry. I'm talking about the whole package in front of you. What dents and what shock it has produced to the overall economic scenario of the world. And this diagram, this graph, is the best summarized representation of, to show you how serious it has been, in terms of having its economic effects. Health effects, yes, but the economic effect. And this is why I want to build my case that while the economy is still grappling with this COVID situation, while the economy is still gasping due to the economic COVID situation economically, and while it's trying to resuscitate and come out of this, get back to consciousness, from this economic mess that COVID has produced, I want to first of all term this idea of this economic downfalls. Of course, this one has a lot to do with pandemic, but there is a method to madness. We cannot blame pandemic as it was a completely a solo or an independent act of, let's say, nature that just came from from outside and then completely destroyed the whole economic progress. No, there is a method to this madness, and COVID to me was just a contributor, just a further facilitator or a catalyst, a big one on top of it, that sort of further destabilized or further awaken the demons that are there in the whole capitalistic financial setup that is running the whole global economy. And this is what I want you to understand. So the diagram that you see in front of me, don't totally blame it to pandemic. It was supposed to happen. There is a method to this madness, and the pandemic was just an outside independent entry that catalyzed and exposed the underbelly, the fragile nature of this whole capitalistic financial economic system, which actually waits for such intrinsic or extrinsic triggers to expose its unstable nature. And what I'm trying to tell you is that don't blame everything on pandemic. This system is prone to show you these demons. This system is prone to show you its repeated instability, and events like pandemic is just another fuel. In this case, a huge amount of fuel in terms of pandemic, which just again ignites this intrinsic inbuilt capacity of fragility of this capitalistic interest-bearing debt financial system that is running the engine of the global economy, which is now a very tightly knitted global multipolar economy in the world. So I want to tell you is that this destruction, this blockage, this sudden stop, this sudden fall is not by chance. These things are waiting to happen. Sometimes such sudden stops, such sudden destruction is intrinsic, where financial crisis has triggered something and it spread like a wildfire and engulfed the whole financial sector of the world, like back in 2008, 2009, the global financial crisis. And sometimes an externality can come in, and in this case, pandemic came in and exposed the underbelly, fragile underbelly of the system. What I'm trying to tell you is that whatever happens, be it the reason is intrinsic or be it the reason is from outside, that exposes this fragile nature of this financial interest-bearing debt financial system. The system is so prone, it's inbuilt, so fragile that it will always be giving you in one way or the other, be it whatever factor gets involved from inside or outside factor, it will always lead you to these collapses, these sudden stops. Reason can be any. In this case, people think it's pandemic, but as I mentioned, there is a method to this madness. You clap with both hands. So one hand was pandemic and one hand was the automatic inbuilt fragile nature of this financial system that was waiting for the pandemic or any other internal or external factor to come in and fuel this, ignite this fragility or this instability. And then you have a situation where you face mass poverty, in amplified mass poverty, amplified unemployment, amplified new ways of businesses and economies collapsing. It's a mess. It's a mess. What I want you to be informed about, that Quran, alhamdulillah, as Fasihul Baligh it has referred, it has very clearly mentioned to this fragile nature by this very powerful word in Al-Baqarah 276, yamhak, mahak. It has referred to this mahak, this sudden stops, more than 1400 years ago, that if you build a system that is going to operate on interest bearing debt finance, it will by itself, either intrinsically induced or induced from outside, it will always lead you to downfall. It will always lead you to yamhaq. This is why the ayah says yamhaqullahu riba. So what you're seeing right now over here is nothing that Quran didn't inform societies about. And it was very clear that if it is a riba-based system, or a system that is uh, beside al-bay', a system that is different from the main kanun of al-bay', and is practiced on the notions of interest-bearing debt finance or riba-based system, it will always be yamhaqullahu riba. It will always face a mahak. And this is another episode, this is another latest example, that it's not that, don't blame pandemic, blame the financial system, because why is it not mazboot enough to absorb? And let's say if it's a natural externality COVID situation, it would be capable enough to absorb and not get collapsed totally. So it getting collapsed is another evidence, is another demonstration, of beautiful demonstration of Al-Baqarah 276, which says, do whatever you want, intrinsic or extrinsic factor will come, and automatically the system will face mahak. So it is yamhaqullahu riba in demonstration. So this is exactly the latest example of yamhaqullahu riba. Of course, the ayah goes on to say wa yurubi sadaqat as well, but that's a different topic, and we can have another session on yurubi sadaqat too. But currently, what I'm trying to tell you is that the world yet again, although induced by, let's say, the COVID situation, which fueled it, or which further facilitated the ignition in a massive way and engulfed the whole global economy, because it is so globalized, it is another episode of mahak happening to the financial system. This is what I want you to introduce, that this is a yamhak that Quran has informed us more than 1400 years ago. Now, this is why I become so worried that another externality is coming. You think that a COVID externality was doing this, and this is how big the yamhak is. There is another externality coming, and we call it climate change this time. And my worry is that the mahak a financial system will now face because of climate change, because it's so huge. It's such a huge mess coming. I don't want to make people afraid or panicked, but this is reality. You just read the latest reports, what United Nations has shown, the IPCC reports. Just a few weeks ago, this just happened in Geneva, where the global leaders gathered together, and there was a 3,000-pager report that was submitted by United Nations Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. You just read the report and you just see, I don't want to say Armageddon, but it's human inflicted yamhak that is coming on our way. And guess what? Operating the global economy with the same riba-based financial system that Quran has told you that it will lazim face yamhak, be it whatever thing ignites it, internal or external. Imagine you're going to operate in a same financial system on a same model of interest-bearing debt finance. Imagine the amount or the scale or the magnitude of mahak the system will face, and the human suffering due to that yamhak. Because this time the externality is not a pandemic. If you think the pandemic externality was scary and the mess is too huge, or the mahak is too huge, see what climate change may attempt to do. Because climate change, man oh man, this is going to be something else. This is going to be, you think pandemic was unprecedented? Well, you read these reports and what's happening, it's already there. I'm not talking future tense. I'm talking it's already there. Effects are already there. I don't know if you have chance to go through a recent report that came from Madagascar. Madagascar has nothing to do in disturbing climate, but it is already facing water deprivation. It is already facing food deprivation. Famine issues are already coming. Drought is already coming. insects or birds, in that area are already facing health issues. Their birds and insects are changing colors because of this environment change. The nature is so delicately balanced, guys. I was reading a report once. I was traveling in an aeroplane. If I remember correctly, I was reading the report where I was reading one article which says that in the Pacific Ocean, the U.S. side of the Pacific Ocean, the temperature of that surface of that ocean has just increased by a few decimal points. And the flocks of bird who used to fly over that surface of the ocean, they used to dip and fill their beaks with water and drink water from that surface. Now their beaks are not designed for a change in temperature, be it in decimal points, because the nature has not designed their beaks to adjust to that increase in temperature. Whichever bird was drinking water from that, their beaks became contaminated, and after a few days there was a huge number of birds that were dying because of that. So this is how sensitive climate change is. You see what happened in Turkey, you see what happened recently in California or in Canada. Not only wildfires are going to increase, look at the amount of people just died because of the heat wave in the United States and Canada. 50 degrees, 52 degrees of the temperature was recorded in Oregon and the Canadian regions in that part of the world. This was unprecedented. So the nature is so uniquely balanced that you cannot avoid becoming a or getting affected by with this climate change. And I'm talking right now in the financial sense of it. So I just introduced you this concept of yamhak, the Quranic concept of yamhak. Let's brace ourselves for the yamhak that is driven by climate change. And already people, Mark Henry, who has been the governor of the Bank of England, and now he's the advisor on climate change for the UK government, he is in the financial and the insurance sector or the economic sense of it, he is already terming something that he coined as climate Minsky moment. If folks are aware of the Minsky moment in the financial sense, where Minsky moment is when the financial system collapsed because of the debt nature of it, the debt system of the or the debt collection or the debt nature of the financial system becomes so unprecedented and unmanageable that the financial system faces a Minsky moment, and this is when the yamhak happens, driven by interest-bearing debt. In this case, the yamhak is not only going to happen by the normal Minsky moment of the debt, unprecedented, unmanageable debt accumulation that increases due to interest attached to it. It is also now going to face a double Minsky moment, and this time addition of climate Minsky moment. And people are already bracing itself. And guess what? This is what my worry is, that the financial system that actually is so prone to any internal and external externality and ready to show its fragility because it is going to face yamhak as being a river-based system, it is not ready to absorb climate change Minsky moments. You see what I mean over here? It is not only ready to absorb its own Minsky moments, the traditional Minsky moments, let alone climate change Minsky moments. So because it is so commodification and financialized driven, it actually thrives itself. It produces climate issues. The financial system, the commodification, financialization, where the nature of the system is acquisitive and process is accumulative, it commodifies everything towards its certain benefits. And while it creates a class culture, while it appears to be thriving, it is actually working in reverse and creating unprecedented humanitarian crisis prone or crisis termed issues. And one of a financial system, the commodification, financialization, acquisitive nature, and the accumulative process of inbuilt essence of it, the riba-based system, are actually responsible for leading or stimulating humanity uh, to run an economic model, a self-entrusted economic model, where climate change will lazim become one of the issues. So financial system, while it's going to face the effects of climate change or the yamhak of climate change, it actually produces those yamhak. So don't think that the financial system faces yamhak. It produces yamhak and then it faces its own created yamhak. And in this case, its own created yamhak is in the form of climate change issues that this financial system led industrialization created. And countries like Madagascar, which have nothing to do with that, are facing the consequences. So brace yourself because of this fitra of financial system, of this interest-bearing debt-based financial system. It is not only going to create yamhak, it is going to face yamhak as well. And this is where now you're going to face a upscaled, unprecedented yamhak, which will be accompanied by a pandemic, yes, but now a climate change Mahak is now coming up. That is so the financial system. Guess what? Don't rely on that, because if you are and you think that you can fight yourself, you can get insurance, you can get mitigation. The insurance sector can save you from climate change insurance, for example. No, sir. The system is not capable of doing that. As a matter of fact, it thrives on producing crisis, and climate Minsky moment is coming. So, as I mentioned, like a pandemic, climate risk is expected unexpected events. Climate risk can be known to impose costs, but measuring and predicting them requires probabilistic assumptions with significant tail risks. And this is why it is now called green swan. I don't know if you've heard about black swans. It is now called green swans. And black swans are those things that are hard to predict. Probability of occurring is very minimal, but if they do occur, they have massive impact. Those are more normal financial, economic crisis driven black swans or in any other externalities. Green swans are necessarily climate change driven effects. Low probability fat tail events, but if they do occur, man oh man, they go crazy, and annihilation or Armageddon status of scaling of effects that they carry. So this is what the situation is, guys. So while the current pandemic was foreseeable, the unexpected systemic risk arising from the coronavirus economic collapse is a useful baseline for comparison. Here, cost already estimates a $9 trillion global economic dent. Just right now as we speak, you're talking about roughly, if not more than that, at least a $9 trillion economic dent already the global economy has faced because of pandemic. But guess what? If it's climate change, Yamaha, I don't even have words to explain. I don't want to create a fear frenzy. I'm not a media person who's going to create a media frenzy over here, but I'm just so worried that, I mean, we have to do something about that, and we need to at least have our economic house on the order, that if it does not help us avoid it, but at least allow us better absorption, better mitigation strategy, or better mitigated economic financial system that at least sort of dampens the effects of climate change. Of course, it's not going to avoid them at all. Now, the other thing that, I mean, I want to tell you about climate change is, and this is why it is such a big yamhak on the way, financial system wise, and this is an externality driven yamhak in this case. And of course, externality that was created internally by the financial system itself. Financial system is not independent of creating climate change issues. It is the financial, as I mentioned, financial system thrives by creating such externalities for those events to be materialized, into form of yamhak. So it creates situation for a yamhak to happen, and then it faces the yamhak as well. My God, I mean, what else to say? So a financial system that is operating the global economy, it thrives itself by creating a situation of yamhaks and then allowing them to happen, and then faces the consequences of that yamhak. What a mess. So the issue with green swans of climate change is they're not normal risks. They are they are they are risks that are never heard of before. They are risks that are unprecedented nature, and they are physical nature risk as well as transition risk. Now, physical risks, easy to understand that with climate change, I mean, you can see physical things happening. You can see drought, you can see famine, you can see, hot temperatures, sea level rising, arid conditions, waterbed wiping off,
forests fire, physical damage, human lives getting affected. This is physical risk. Yes, they itself are huge. Not sure how people are going to manage it. But there is another part of these risks called transition risks, guys. Now, transition risks are very sensitive. This is new. This is new. Transition risks are two nature, unprecedented. First of all, transition risk means it can transit my mentality. So, for example, if my focus was on to manage a food shortage risk or an agricultural risk that was caused by climate change and my crops were getting destroyed, so I was trying to come up with a technology solution or a scientific solution to manage that kind of agricultural climate risk. But all of a sudden, something else has been triggered. And I can see now, I see wildfire happening. I'm just giving you an example. So what it happens is, while I was focused, I had my mind focused on solving a agricultural issue that was caused by a climate change scenario. All of a sudden, at the same time, another risk has been triggered. And now I have to divert my focus and I need to transit from agriculture risk to another wildfire risk or a sea level rising risk or a wildlife risk, for example. So it means I don't have time to focus on managing one risk at one time. I'm transiting from one risk to another. My mind is transiting from one risk to another. So I'm managing and transiting my mental space one after another, one simultaneously, as a matter of fact, even. So this is what I call transition risk. The other category of transition risk that climate change will give us, the mahak of climate change that is coming, is that risks will shift. At one point, you think it's only an agriculture risk. At the same time, you would say, oh my God, even the birds are getting affected. People who consume that agriculture are affected. So this is also a risk within a risk. So risks transiting or shifting within themselves. Risks, one risk transiting to another risk or giving birth to another risk, joint risks, interconnected risk. So transition risks are one, my mentality gets transit from one risk to another risk, and the risks itself is getting translated into another forms of risk. So it's so much happening at the same time. I'm not sure if economically or financial system wise how we are going to manage that, because we are operating a system that thrives itself, builds itself by creating a situation that will lead you to yamhaks and then allowing those yamhaks to happen and then facing the consequences of those yamhaks. My God, it's just I don't know that the right word. It's Armageddon is what I'm saying, financial system wise. A thing or two about GCC and Oman, Kuwait included, of course. You can read this paragraph. I mean, the world is trying its best as per the IPPC Geneva Convention, as per the red code for humanity terminology that was used. It's trying its best that at least for the end of this century, the climate change temperature, the global temperature rise does not move beyond 1.5 degrees. This itself is so messy. You have already destroyed the balance of nature, increase of 1.5 degrees. I just mentioned you one report where only a decimal points of increase in the surface of the ocean was affecting the birds. This is how delicate the balance of the nature is. So a 1.5 degree is already too much. So governments are trying to, United Nations is trying to say that no more 1.5. If it goes beyond that, then it has to take us a lot of time, and at least for the century limit it to 1 point. Wallahu alam how successful they are, because the mess has been so much because of this financial system, financialization, commodifization, driven industrialization that has created this issue. All is man-made, by the way. All is man-made. Don't think it's natural. It's all human-made, and supporting that human-made item was the financial system that led humans to reach to this point. So this is what I wanted to talk about GCC. In Oman's case, Oman has been so far been very active, folks, and I'm sure other GCC members as well, in demonstrating its solidarity with global community in combating climate change. Oman in 2016 signed the landmark Paris Agreement. Of course, that Paris Agreement is now being trying to be resuscitated or rejuvenated through this United Nations IPCC. The Sultanate has, I'm talking about Oman over here, the Sultanate has already ratified the International Convention on Climate Change issues in terms of the Kyoto Protocols and Vienna Conventions, and the Montreal Protocols vis-a-vis ozone layers and stuff like that. In addition to the national efforts to address the negative impacts of global warming and the challenges of climate change, the Sultanate of Oman, in cooperation with the United Nations Environment Programme, has implemented a project to prepare a national strategy for the adaptation and mitigation of climate change in the Sultanate. And so many other programs and capacity building led programs are being put in place. We in Bank Nizwa, Alhamdulillah, we are trying to be very proactive and trying to train and alert our staff to this upcoming green swans climate change issue, and how we can adjust product wise, service wise in a very preemptive, proactive way to ensure that at least we in Oman, through Bank Nizwa, Islamic finance way, and I will explain why Islamic finance becomes more significant, and what Bank Nizwa can play a very, very vital role, at least in the Omani setup, helping the local society and the government. Oman already is working on a blueprint to combat the climate change issues. It's a national strategy is there. So Alhamdulillah, Yani, I mean, steps are being taken in the right direction. And as I mentioned, Islamic banking wise, Bank Nizwa has already set its trajectory towards preemptively and proactively address this. Pakistan is another example, guys. I'm happy to share that these are the Muslim communities, Muslim countries who are taking the front lead to combat proactively this climate change. Not proactively anymore, it's already there now. Now Pakistan is a fine example. I mean, people who have been hearing news about Pakistan, I mean, it's doing a lot of work, a lot of proactive work in combating or mitigating or adapting to climate change. There is now a political drive. It's now a political agenda of the country. There is a legislation now where there is a notion of clean and green Pakistan, vis-a-vis all the United Nations accords, like what Oman has done. But now Pakistan has made it to the political will. It's a political movement now to preserve environment and to mitigate climate change. So much so that the efforts and moves of Pakistan are being acknowledged world over in terms of following Pakistani footprints. Now there is a movement under United Nations called 1 trillion tree movement, where the world is going to grow 1 trillion trees to combat climate change and greenhouse emissions, to sort of salvage some environmental damages. They are going to plant over the next 10 years 1 trillion trees over the world. But guess what? Pakistan is already well in advance fulfilling its objective, and it is planting 10 billion trees, 2 billion of which have already been planted. 25% of the conversion to renewable energy in the overall system of the country by 2030. The Pakistani economy is shifting to 50% of the electric vehicle, and green jobs are being produced in the system, something that is totally new. The country held on last 5th of June the World Environment Day, which was chaired by the Pakistani Prime Minister, and all the noble delegates from the world, the Prime Minister, the global leaders took part in that. So these are very fine examples, the Omani and the Pakistani examples, that people are getting alert to this whole phenomena of climate change issues. But is the financial system alert to it, or if not alert to it, are you going to use the same financial setup to even combat climate change, even which couldn't allow you to manage pandemic scenarios? Well, I don't doubt that. I don't believe it. So this is where Islamic finance, guys, comes in. So Islamic finance, to me, I mean, I'm proposing Islamic finance as a system that is potent enough, fitra-wise as well. This is why there is a maqsad that Quran told us about this Islamic economic system and the rules and falsafa of this Islamic economic. While it was telling us more than 1400 years ago about the yamhaq capacity of an interest-based system, it also told us that if you do an al-bay'a version of system, we call it Islamic financial system, yani you will be the opposite of yamhaq. And this is why I'm trying to bring in that although this yamhaq is not natural yamhaq, again, all the mahaks are of an interest-bearing system are man-made, self-inflicted yamhaqs, nothing to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or nature itself. It's all, when Allah says it's going to face yamhaq, it means it is going to give you inbuilt yamhaqs. It's self-inflicted yamhak, and climate change is one of them. So here we are proposing now that perhaps Islamic finance, which is a anti-yamhak system, and I call it an anti-fragile system, anti-fragile system. This is where the beauty of Islamic comes in. So when I say anti-yamhak, it means anti-fragile, it means anti-yamhak system, is what I'm trying to tell you. So guys, what anti-fragility means or anti-yamhak means, let's put it in Arabic text or the Fusha text, is that, you know, normally when people see, and it's a concept that was floated by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who was also the inventor of the black swans. He came up with this the terminology back in 2014, 2015, where he says that normally people think that the opposite of fragile is robust, you know, but he said that no, the opposite of fragile is not robust, because fragile, you know, it's fragile. You put a pressure on that system, internal or external pressure, it breaks, like the financial system. Fragile, it can be inbuilt fragility, it can implode, it can explode, doesn't matter, it's fragile. Any pressure, any test you give to the system, it's fragile. For example, a biscuit or a cookie, you try and break it, you put pressure, it breaks, it's fragile, and it even have cookie crumbs falling down, very fragile. Robust system is that it's a little harder than fragile. Yani, in normal pressure, it will not break. This is what robust is. In normal pressure, it will not break. But if you put more pressure on it, there will come a point of time it will also break. So a robust system or anything that is robust is better than fragile, but it also is fragile. You understand that? A robust system, anything that you think is robust and not fragile, it is not that it's not fragile, it is better than fragile. It does not break easily, but it will also break if you put enough pressure on it. So if people say that we need a robust financial system, we don't need a robust financial system, because it will not be able to mitigate climate change, because the pressure that the world is going to face in every way, including financially, through climate change, Minsky moments or yamhaks, it's not as a pressure unforeseen. So even robust systems will be termed as fragile systems. So what we need is something we call as anti-fragile. The beauty of anti-fragility is, and this is what Islamic finance is, this is why I call it anti-yamhak, anti-fragile Islam financial system, the Islamic system, or an al-bay'a based system, as was termed by Quran itself, when it was also warning us about the yamhaqullah of riba. So anti-fragile is, the more pressure you put on it for the system to break, the more mazboot it becomes. Humans are the good example of an anti-fragile system. For example, if you go to a gym, the more weight you lift, so rather than your muscles getting broken, or if they were fragile, rather than muscles breaking, muscles grow, muscles become more strong. The more weight you lift, the more pressure you put to break a system, the more it grows, the more strong it becomes, the more fancy it becomes. Athletes, if you go and see sports personality, athletes, the more they practice, the more they exercise, the more stronger their muscle becomes, the more they can play well, the more goals they can score, the more agile they become, So the beauty of anti-fragile system is, the more you try and press it, the more you try and test it, it uses that energy and it grows more. Plants, anti-fragile. Humans, human body is anti-fragile. Damag, anti-fragile. The more you use damag, the more sharp you become. Your physical body, anti-fragile. The more you utilize your body, the more stronger it becomes. Army people. What is the difference between a civilian and a soldier, bodily at least, is that the pressures on a soldier's body that have been put while he's in his service of practice and all that, his body is strong, he's mentally strong, he's physically strong, because he has been made anti-fragile. He had this capacity of anti-fragility. In other words, if you talk about spiritually or otherwise, even non-spiritually, Quran has also used this word called ashraf. Humans are the ashraf al-makhluqat. They are the ashraf amongst Allah's creation. Ashrafness, the ashrafness is the anti-fragility of humanity. They are ashraf. The more they commit to something, the better they become. The more you utilize human body, ruh wise, fitra wise, spirituality wise, physically, mentally, heart wise, the better it becomes. It is so ashraf. So anti-fragile can be translated in the Quranic concept as anti-yamhak or anti-mahak or ashraf. Anti-fragility is the ashrafness of the system. According to Quran, the ashrafness of the financial system, the anti-fragility of the financial system, the anti-mahakism of the financial system is the Qanun of al-Bay'. This is where the anti-fragility, ashrafness of the system becomes. Al-Bay'. Al-Bay'. We translate it as risk sharing. Al-Bay' is the anti-fragile fragility core of the Islamic financial system. Al-Bay' is the ashrafness of the financial system, and we call it Islamic financial system because it comes from Islamic teachings. If you want to find how this system is so stable intrinsically, how this system is so anti-fragile, because the more I try, the more shocks it gets, the more it becomes better shock absorbent. The more stronger it becomes. If you see where this ashrafness comes from, it comes from this main Qanun of al-Bay'. And I go to an extent, and I don't want to go into detail because this is not an Islamic finance falsafa class, and I can do a separate session on just telling you Leish al-Bay' is not tijara and it is risk sharing. But I just want to show you this slide and look at this beauty of this ayah, Surah Al-Nur, ayah 37. People often, even if you Google now, you will get it translated as al-Bay' as tijara. No, sir. It is not tijara. The actual meaning of al-Bay' is exchange of property rights. And if you go in depth of it in a financial side, it means risk, because with every property, you are running risks attached to that property. Be it risk of stolen, risk of damage, risk of falah, all the risks come to you. So with each property, if you own it, you run the risks attached with that property. And if you use that property to do business, to do financial muamalat, then you are running the financial risks of that property. And if the other party who is also carrying his own financial property rights risk or business risk attached with that property that he or she owns, when the two party meets and they agree, mutual consent, ijab and kabul happens, be it they decide to practice the model of tijara, be it they decide to do muamalat by using the model of ijara, be it they decide to do their financial muamalat by using their own properties, running all the risks, do it through mudaraba or musharaka or istismar, be it they want to use the model of takaful, be it they want to use the model of waqf or whatever it is, doesn't matter what the model is, at the back end of it is all al-Bay'. So the mother Qanun is al-Bay'. The ashrafness is al-Bay'. The anti-fragility giving Qanun is al-Bay'. The mother is al-Bay'. It is up to me and my hikmah and my expertise which model of al-Bay' or practicing al-Bay' suits me in that situation. It can be the model of tijara, it can be the model of ijara, it can be the model of istismar, it can be the model of sukuk, it can be the model of takaful, it can be the model of yani waqf, it can be the model of other infaq and social finance. I just need to select the model. Behind each model is the same main Qanun, the mother of Qanun, al-Bay', risk sharing, because whatever model I practice, let's say tijara, I exchange properties, I exchange my asset and I get fulus, which is somebody else's property, and that fulus also had risks attached to that property. So if I earn fulus are my property, I took all the risks in making that property fulus my property, and all the risks that now come with that fulus are all my risks. So I go to the market with my own property and its own risk, and I meet a seller who is selling a table, for example, who took all the risks in making that table, bringing that table to the market risk, transportation risk, falan risk, all these unavoidable natural fitri risk he or she took. Now when we meet and we decide to practice the model of tijara and doing al-Bay', in practicing the main Qanun of al-Bay', we agree that now we are going to exchange properties. In this way, exchange the risks of those properties and share each another's risks. Exchanging risk is actually acknowledging each another's risk taking appreciating it, and sharing each another risk. Because if we don't agree, who knows that the seller may go empty-handed? Who knows that the buyer may go empty-handed? So we have stopped seller and the buyer by ijab and kabul, in this case the model of tijara to practice al-bay'. We have stopped each another from taking any other risks, and we shared those risks, exchanged them, shared them. And this is, Leish, it's called risk sharing and not al-bay', because the most common model of practicing al-bay' is tijara. 90% of practice of al-bay' is tijara. So people started for grantedly using tijara as if representing al-bay'. So that does not make the al-bay' as tijara. Common practice of doing al-bay' or the common model of practicing al-bay' is tijara, but that does not, people started misusing it or frankly using it or informally using it, al-bay' and tijara as the same thing. But it's not. So I don't want to go into detail, but the session is not meant for that. I can have another session just on this itself. So what I'm saying is, this is where this anti-fragility comes. This is where this ashrafness of this financial system comes. People may ask, okay, if this is the ashrafness, then why no Muslim country is practicing Islamic financial system? I don't want to give examples like this, but I give you a live example. Silicon Valley, USA. Now in Silicon Valley, exactly this is done. Al-bay', istismar, through istismar. Silicon Valley, USA, in California and San Diego, in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. If you go there, where even it hosts all these Facebooks, Googles, and all these offices too. Such a beautiful, I had a chance to visit it. Such a beautiful, beautiful place. When you go there, it's a different world altogether. So what happens in this, guys, is that, in Silicon Valley, they practice this Ashraf Qanun of al-bay' through istismar, through mudarabas and musharaka, and venture capital, they call it. They call it now, these days, you call it crowdfunding or angel investing and whatnot. So all what happens is, you have ideas, you have venture capitalists, institutionals, individual businesses. It's a full ecosystem that helps ideas and mushariks and rabbul mals together, mudaribs together. Classic al-bay' istismar is happening. And guess what? It was so anti-fragile, this system is, that it is actually technology dictating the whole world. All the technology solutions that has come from Silicon Valley, all the solutions, technology solutions that has transformed the world in the last at least 40 years, you name it. Microsoft, Google's, Facebook's, HP's, smartphones, whatever you name it, and that has transformed the technologically the world and made it such a global hut. I tell you something, you name it, and I will tell you it was funded by mudaraba and musharaka mechanics, not a single penny of interest-bearing debt. So it's such an anti-fragile system that in the middle of 2008, 2009, intrinsic financial mahak that was happening, this itself was producing jobs, Silicon Valley, and the highest paid, top 15 paid salary earners was that. This I want to, I can go into further examples, but I'm just pressing for time. It's already 1 hour. The magic part is that now these days, the world has been disrupted by technology. And guess what? All the technology solution that is making fintech or financial technology so common, and I call it AKA, also known as Islamic or risk-sharing finance, all those modes of technology that is making fintech so disruptive that even big techs are coming in, big companies are coming into financial technology and trying to create their own financial products, Apple Pay and Facebook Libra and all this and that. I can't go into details because this is not the focus of the session. All of them are using nothing but pure al-bay' system, risk share through istismar model, mudaraba and musharaka. All of them, you name it, P2P investing, angel investing, crowdfunding, all of these are classic. They are actually serving the actual mandate of Islamic finance. So fintech disruption has actually rejuvenated or created a third time lucky opportunity to reframe, reassert Islamic finance, this time from its actual fitra, from its actual ashraf core of al-bay' and re-announce Islamic finance from its actual fitra practice, which fintech is already doing. So if you're going to ta'al to the fitra of Islamic finance, of risk sharing, because you've been forced by the world through technological disruptions, which is using mudarabas and musharakas and venture capital, whatever fancy name that they call it at the base, they remain mudaraba and musharaka. If you're going to now go back to your fitra because the world of fintech has forced you to go back, shame. So this is why I think this is a opportunity in disguise in so many ways. If people understand this, alerting that before fintech takes you to your fitra and people start pointing fingers, now you're coming back to your fitra because fintech initiation led you to leave you no option, and big techs came in and the West phenomena came in, and now you're coming in. Better realize it and very preemptively at least plan it from 2021 onwards. What I call is as a new version 2 of technology driven Islamic finance, which allows the risk sharing fitra of Islamic finance to be practiced. And I don't want to go into too much detail because I can, I mean, I don't want to detract myself, because when you start talking about, at least I start talking about the falsafa of risk sharing essence or ashrafness or qanun of Islamic finance, then you want to go and talk about the issues that how people have misunderstood riba as if it is the main qanun and not al-bay' as the main qanun. Remember, main qanun is al-bay'. Riba are the important protocols, the strict protocols, the unavoidable protocols, akhlaqiyat, ethics, the unavoidable ethics to practice al-bay'. You cannot practice al-bay' if you do not stop practicing gharar, riba, etc., etc. So for me to practice or live the ashrafness of the financial system, which is a fitri financial system, any financial system that will work on the mechanics or the ashrafness of it as given by Quran, will be Islamic automatically. You don't even need to call it Islamic. But the ikhlaqiyat, the strictest protocols, unavoidable protocols to run such an ashraf system is that like when you drive, you need to have a driving license. It's a strict protocol. You need to know the traffic rules. You need to know the traffic sign. These are those protocols that allows you to become a safe driver, without which you may still know driving, but you are a danger to yourself and to the other drivers too on the road. So same applies over here. So if you want to do al-bay', if you want to live the ashrafness of the financial system, have a driving license for that financial system, have a license to operate. And no riba is a strict, let's say it's a license to practice that al-bay', the main qanun. But what has happened is that in the current model of Islamic finance, license have become the main qanun, and people don't know driving, but they are making sure that we get the license. You don't know driving, but you're getting licenses. You see, so your focus is let's have no riba, and if al-bay' comes in whatever scope or scale, inshallah ta'ala, let it be, but let's focus on no riba. So it's an upside down application of model, in my personal opinion, where no riba has been portrayed as if it's the main qanun. Rather, it is the main protocol of doing the main qanun, and the main qanun is al-bay' / risk sharing, the ashrafness of the system, the anti-fragility domain of the system. Now, if you want to implement, and this is the opportunity now is because of this technology disruption, because of this new normal world post-pandemic, in a climate change, Mehak approaching world, in a multipolar, tightly globalized world. Globalization is beautiful, but you have to live up to these expectations and have enough shock absorbent capacities in takaful wise as well. Takaful will have a huge role to play, risk sharing driven takaful, to absorb climate change. And remember, climate change is going to not only give other aspects, it will also give birth to something, something we call as climate change refugees. You may have heard of political or war refugees. Now you have climate change refugees. Who knows? So, and this is going to happen. For example, Madagascar is going to perhaps, in Mauritius, in Bangladesh, these countries are in the red alert zone already, if not beyond that. So if you want to relive this or live to this opportunity of implementing a Jadid anti-fragile financial system, anti-mahak financial system, or an ashraf financial system, we term it as risk-sharing driven financial system / Islamic financial system, you have to operate it in a technology-driven mode. And if you want to operate it in a technology-driven mode and live up to its potency and expectation, You have to apply and understand fintech from its own ecosystem. You just cannot apply it as a fashion. Don't because it's a buzzword and adopt it just to suffice the buzzword and become it's a fashion out there. No, sir. Apply it by understanding its own ecosystem from the financial service perspective, from the digitization perspective, from the customer behavior perspective. This is a beautiful slide that tells you the whole domains of the fintech ecosystem, and then apply it into this, and then live up to this anti-fragility. And I tell you something, UN SDGs or climate change and all this and that, you will have a financial system that is much more shock absorbent and less fragile. I'm not saying it can help you avoid that or it can offer magics to you, because the mess that the financial system of interest bearing system has done, it will take time. But what I'm saying is it will be much better, at least shock absorbent wise or economic growth wise. UN SDGs, few aspects on UN SDGs. Again, I feel startled when I say that when these movements are driven by UN, we feel so appreciative that, wow, amazing stuff is coming. But guess what? I term UN SDGs, it's only 17 goals. I term it as a downscaled version of the overall halal economy as we know. Halal economy is much, much bigger. It goes much beyond what UN SDGs are trying to tell us or trying to help us achieve. I am in favor of UN SDGs, but to us as an ummah, it is already there, much more to it. Quran talks about halal economy. There are a number of ayat that talks about halal, not only halal, it talks about halal tayyib as a behavior, as a lifestyle. So UN SDG is only serving 17 of those halal tayyib, halal goals. Halal economy is much beyond that. I remember when I was growing up, my grandmother used to tell me to respect the food we eat. And if one piece of bread used to fall down on floor, we were trained to pick it up and kiss it and then eat it again. This is the level of culture that we come. This is the level of respect that we have. And when you talk about these and people start working as if it's a new phenomenon, wow, what a United Nations initiative. You have to look inside, just go and see our cultures and our Islamic values. It's so halal. We are much beyond that. It's sad we are not aware of it and we do not project it and practice it, and we are led by others. We are receivers rather than leaders, is what I'm saying. And I tell you something, guess what? We have already signed a mithaq. Quran talks a number of ayat on this primordial covenant, mithaq. It's not an aqd, it's mithaq between us and Allah. We have already signed this before coming to this dunya and this fani dunya, that this fani dunya, before we come back to our fitrah and go back to Allah Ta'ala, we signed this mithaq that when we go to his dunya, we will live our life according to the mithaq terms and conditions. One of those terms and condition is between us and Allah. Allah says, according to one term and condition of mithaq, rizq min Allah, I will provide you rizq. And simultaneously we sign an our term and condition to that is, we go to your world, we will obey your rules, and we will earn the same rizq in not only halal but a halal tayyib way. And living UN SDGs, achieving them is a downscaled version of this halal tayyibness. We have signed this. Allah has reminded us of this mithaq, what we have signed, and has reminded us of halal tayyib. You guys have signed a halal tayyib lifestyle. What are you doing? And among that halal tayyib lifestyle is an ashraf system I gave you that is driven by al-bay'a, the risk sharing qanun. What are you doing? You were supposed to do that. You signed a mithaq with me, and I'm going to judge you as per that mithaq. If you don't do it, I told you what the consequences are. If you do it, I have given you examples of quoting other aqwam, who didn't follow the rules and who went astray. I was reminding them about the mithaq. I was reminding them of the messages through our Rasul, through our Nabis, through miracles, through whatever ways. And the Quran does the same. It tells us stories, it tells us facts and figures, and it also gives us solutions, gives us management techniques, give us all the facilitation to implement those techniques. So beautiful, such a super duper support Allah gives us to implement what he wants. He does not leave us alone. Okay, you decide, this is what I tell you to do, go do it. No, it does not leave us alone. He further supports us by facilitating us with different tools, with different instruments. And Quran is the instruments of all ecosystem. What a beautiful book. Inshallah, may Allah give us more and more tawfiq to get close to Quran and understand and implement it. To achieve this prospective challenge, man oh man, financial and political dilemmas. I don't want to go into these details. You know what I mean. Globalization, climate refugees, I've mentioned that. Lack of proper reliable data to understand the nature, the scope and scale of climate technologies, particularly from the financial, insurance and regulatory side. People still don't understand this. Role of social finance will become so important, because I tell you something, if we rely on the current financial, riba-based financial system that is so fragile, so many times it thrives on it, as a matter of fact, gives birth to fragility. Role of social finance will become so important, not only Islamic finance, because countries will run out of financial options. So social finance, the role of waqf, the role of philanthropy will be center stage, and applying technology and jidd to all of these stuff would be so crucial. We have to understand Maqasid Sharia in a dynamic way as well, because we are going to live in a new normal world, and Maqasid has to be extended to these new normal dynamics. There are a number of hadiths and Quranic, instructions, as a matter of fact, that has also alerted us how to manage environment, how to preserve environment. Remember, even Prophet saying that even if you see Yawm al-Qiyamah coming in front of you and you're planting a tree, plant it. Don't stop. Still plant it. This is how conscious Islam and Islamic teaching are towards environment. I can go on and on, on the whole halal. This is our lifestyle, halal tayyibness. We are so environment conscious, let alone other aspects conscious. We are so environment and climate conscious already. Mitigation versus adaptation, I mentioned that. While mitigation tackles the causes of climate change, adaptation tackles the effects of the phenomenon. Adaptation is crucial to reducing vulnerability of climate change. So going back to a risk-sharing Islamic financial, a natural financial system is actually adapting ourselves, at least from the financial side, so that we are not too vulnerable to the climate change issues. A successful adaptation can reduce vulnerability by building on a strengthening existing coping strategies, at least from the financial science, and an anti-financial system based on risk-sharing / Islamic finance. Actual Islamic finance could be the answer, and is the answer, as a matter of fact. Islamic Climate Change Declaration 2015, I don't know how many people are aware of it, but this actually paved way for Paris Accord. I'm sure people are aware of Paris Accord in 2016, but people are not much aware of the Islamic Climate Change Declaration that was done in Jeddah. Muslim Ummah has been conscious. We are there, we are here. We just don't know how to project ourselves. Sometimes it's so sad. So, and of course, I think sooner or later in the next 5 years' time, given the situation in our hands and worsening climate change-wise, we need something like on the tracks of World Bank or IMF. We need a body that is called FDI, or a body on the lines of World Bank and climate change, even Islamic Development Bank. Climate change finance, or climate finance body. It's about time that we are going to have a climate finance body, a body that will give finance to countries to mitigate, adapt to climate change issues. Time is ripe to call it climate change issues. This is what I call a special global bank for climate financing. Tax social platform ideas, investing in green finance, green project, green ideas, green jobs. I don't really care what color you give it, green, purple, blue, orange, whatever it is, but as long as you are going it and doing it in an ashraf, natural, anti-fragile manner, at least from the financial side of it. So I think time is there almost to develop a bank, a global bank for climate financing. Again, what is going to be crucial is lack of system and believers in human capital support, visionary supports. We don't want to mess this up by only dominating the trajectory of it by knowers. We need visionaries and believers that we missed in implementing the 40 years old model of Islamic finance. Fintech Waqf, I'm proposing social finance is going to have a lot of role to play. Focus also on Ushr. We talk about Zakah, but we don't talk about Ushr. Again, I'm just using this session to alert you to these ideas. I can even give just a session on this slide: the philanthropy finance venture, a fintech Waqf solution, and the focus on Ushr. I can just dedicate a full course or a full section or full session or lecture on just this. And maybe I can ask Mohammed to plan this with me. So these are the go-to things, folks, over here. Sorry about this mess, this error over here. And I've told you, service as work, where people don't want to contribute fulus or asset, but you can even contribute your capacities, your service as work. For example, this lecture, normally I get paid to impart an expert lecture like this, making paper aware, creating awareness and making people aware about such issues. Normally I get paid for this, but I can say, Muhammad, guess what? I consider this as my waqf, this lecture as my waqf to this platform. So service waqf concept we are trying to bring. And key takeaways: it's about time that we must go back to the fitra, the ashrafness of the actual Islamic financial system, with the main kanun of al-bay' and interest, and no gharar, no maisir, no falan, understood as its strict protocol license to practice al-bay'. Risk-sharing technologies, social finance, financial inclusion, UN SDGs, and climate change are going to be in focus for this version, techno-driven version 2 of Islamic finance. Time is ripe for a full-fledged formal body to govern and administer Islamic social finance, like IOFI, like IFSB, like IILM. You must have a dedicated body that administers and govern Islamic social finance, do's and don'ts, rules and standard setting, and etc., etc. And as I mentioned, time is also ripe to have already starting the creation of a dedicated global bank for climate change on the lines of IMF or World Bank. What we know as UN SDGs, circular, blue or green or blue economy, we already know this as halal economy more than 1400 years ago. We have signed it in Misak, and Quran is reminding us by alerting us through its ayat or through its verses. So it's halal, not only halal, it also tells us to prefer halal. Tayyib. Lost 2 decades of young experts who could be aligned to such models and challenges, attuned well with the underpinnings of the core information. This is why I feel my responsibility to make people, particularly the youth, alert to these issues and focus on the history, with future in focus to the new age fiqh of the version 2 of Islamic finance. And with the youth, cyber risk are going to be there, climate risk management, new kind of risk management has to be developed, with 2030 of Islamic finance in focus. And people, planet, people, profit should be the trajectory, not profit, and then people, and then planet, because you're forced now. Planet, people, profit has to be the trajectory of this new Islamic. We don't have any other option. This is the new trajectory, even Maqasid al-Sharia wise. So I thank you very much for listening to me. I hope, I was able to alert you at least through this session to these very, very important issues. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to take them. Any shortcomings, I'm a human, as funny as you are, preoccupied with so many other things. Haven't even eaten. So if there is any shortcomings, please forgive me. And, inshallah ta'ala, I will keep on improving with your dua and support. Tawfiq, inshallah, with Allah.
Inshallah. Thank you very much, Mr. Mughees. MashaAllah. That is really an impressive and interesting lecture. And thank you very much for sharing your high, thoughtful ideas and concepts, and for presenting anti-fragile Islamic financial model.
Ashraf Islamic financial model, yeah, anti-yamhaq.
Anti-yamhaq, right. So that's really interesting. Even maybe it's like beyond what we are seeing nowadays. Like you also presented some ideas, some reasons why now global finance is being affected by the not only pandemic and also climate change. So, and you relate to Islamic concept, and your presentation was based on Quranic and Islamic studies, and from references from the Quran as well. MashaAllah, thank you very much for your effort and for your time.
It's all Allah's tawfiq. Nothing, it's not in my hands. It's nothing me, it's all Allah. It's all Allah. Nothing in our hands. It's not us.
So we really need some ideas and concepts like beyond or like out of the box that we are seeing, we are studying nowadays. So this really a high thoughtful lecture, mashallah. May Allah bless you. So we can take some questions, or if anybody would like to add any idea or any other additional point, we welcome. Either you raise your hand, we can switch on microphone for you, or you can write your question as well. There is someone who asked, the session was amazing and very, very interesting. We want more and more. Barakallah. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, this is what I said just now. Thank you so much, yeah, for your compliment. So let's see, there are some brothers raise their hand. We'd love to hear from you. Mr. Ahmed Al-Hadi. Brother Ahmed Al-Hadi, welcome, brother. Yeah, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Shaukat and Dr. Yahya. I just have small question that's come to my mind every few months. This is for the certificate of halal. Is there any what you call rules that can be applied for this halal? Because for the chicken, as example, in Brazil, not all of them doing halal, and they just putting this stamp or this name halal, but they are not following. How we can guarantee that the Brazilian or any other country making halal? This is the first question. And is there another thing, another certificates going along with this halal, or is there any way that we can, as Islamic countries, create what you call strict certificates called halal, new halal, or another name?
Okay, brother, thank you very much. Although, I mean, not relevant to the topic, but I'll still go ahead and answer this question. You know, I mean, this is, I love the, I mean, you're very idealistic, and alhamdulillah, may Allah bless you. And this is how it should be, as a matter of fact. But, you know, I mean, normally when the practice is when any country wants to label anything halal, it has its own local ways of doing it. It has its own local bodies that assures the halalness of any product or service. So in your country, I'm sure there must be some government body or government rules or regulation that items has to follow to label themselves halal. If not, and if they want to enter their products and services into the halal notion or the halal segment of the market or in the halal industry, then you can go for international halal regulations as well. Malaysian JAKIM is one, Indonesians have a good one, in Oman we also have one. So it's very country specific is what I'm saying. So, but having a robust, one full-fledged umbrella halal body, I mean, I mentioned this, and I mean, there are more issues, there are more things to settle before that happens. So unless those things are settled and there is unanimity, I don't think this is going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to add also one institute which is affiliated by OIC, the Standards and Metrology Institute of Islamic Countries.
Yeah, that's right.
So there also
that's another one.
halal standard certification and halal market, and they have some procedures as well. And there is also a study of halal studies and accreditation in International Islamic University in Malaysia. So they have, like, you know, studies like bachelor, masters, even a PhD level, and they are now having a research center, halal research center as well. Yeah, thank you very much. So let's see another question. Abdi Fattah Musa, brother Abdi Fattah. Please welcome, brother Abdul Fattah. Are you with us, brother Abdul Fattah Musa? Okay, let's see the next, Brother Abdul Rahim. Brother Abdul Rahim. Brother Abdul Rahim. Yes, Brother Abdul Fattah, yeah. Hello? Okay. Abdul Rahim, Mr. Abdul Rahim. I think they got their answer. Maybe they raised hand earlier. Monai Razdi, thank you for the opportunity. Does this accommodate other religions or it's strictly for Islam? I think it's for all humankind.
So
please.
no, I mean, shall I answer that already? This is the question.
Yes, please. Yeah.
As I mentioned, you don't need to. I mean, you don't need to necessarily call it Islamic because it is a fitra-based system. It is a natural system. This is, I mean, I've mentioned this repeatedly, that this is a natural way of doing financial and economic muamalat. You don't need to necessarily call it Islamic. We call it Islamic because we drive it from there. But to see it work, you don't need to be a Muslim or you don't necessarily be a follower of Islam. You can be a Christian or a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Sikh or an atheist even, and you can still see the beauty of it. So it's a natural way of doing system, is what I'm saying. Not
universal.
Yeah, it's universal. It's universal.
Yeah.
Hope it answers this question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, I think there is no more question. We still have 1 or 2 minutes. Maybe if anybody would like to ask or add any comment, any point. No. I think that's okay. So we'd like to thank all attendees and participants from around the world who joined us in this session. We thank you very much on behalf of Islamic Economics Association. Our regards and thanks to you for joining us. And a special thanks to Mr. Mughees Shaukat, our guest speaker, who is also voluntarily, delivering speeches and lectures. And mashallah, thank you very much for your effort and time. So this is, I think, our 4th time, and inshallah many more to come ahead, inshallah. So we thank you very much on behalf of the Nadal Iqtisad Islami. We really appreciate, and we also thank our members, people, staff in Nadal Iqtisad Islami, especially Director General Dr. Ala Al-Ubaid for their effort. And we also provide most of the lectures and talks free of charge. This is like a khidmah for Ummah and for Islam. So we thank you very much. And if you have any concluding remarks, Mr. Mughees, please.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you very much for having me again. And I hope, I mean, I was able to at least alert people to these pressing issues and how Islamic finance can be a better way forward in terms of absorbing or adapting or mitigating these pressing issues that humanity is going to face. Not countries, but humanity in general is going to face universal issues. So I hope that people are aware what MAHAC is and how the interest-bearing debt financing system is based on MAHAC and is prone to give MAHAC. I hope people are aware of anti-fragility of Islamic finance, the ashrafness, where the ashrafness comes from. What's the main qanun? I hope people are aware of the pressing issue of climate change and the mess that is coming. So my main idea was through this session, rather than going into too deep details, at least create a basic clarity, basic unanimity or a consensus about this issue and how Islamic finance carries a potency to address these issues or better mitigate or adapt to these issues and make us less vulnerable is what I'm saying. So, and the ideas discussed, for example, time for social finance to take center stage, technology, initiatives, technology-led version 2 of Islamic finance that is driven mainly by risk-sharing qanun, and of course, time for a global bank on climate financing and stuff like that. So I just really hope that, with Allah's barakah and in His support, I was able to at least make people aware of these things. And from there, I can build further the second, fourth, third step with regards to these areas, these topics, and how Islamic finance can contribute. And it's a fitri system. It is a universal natural system. And I'm very thankful for the efforts that you guys do in this association. I mean, I'm very thankful for having me, and I hope that I was able to add value to your sessions, inshallah ta'ala. And we I myself and the Bank Nizwa, to which I'm associated with, we are very alert to these situations. And as I mentioned, whatever the Omani government is doing, we are not only in line with that, but we try our best to be proactive and preemptive in at least addressing these issues. And inshallah ta'ala, you would see not only currently what Bank Nizwa is doing, even in the future, short and medium to long term future, you would see, an Islamic bank in form of Bank Nizwa, for example, is going to lead in so many ways in proactively trying to administer that. I'm just using this as an example how Islamic banks are trying to equip themselves in a proactive manner. And I wish all the banks to do that, even outside Oman, because this is a collective issue. This is a humanity issue. This is affecting all of us, and we have to be so preemptive and proactively alert to this. And I'm telling you, inshallah, if the niyyah is there, Allah will give us the tawfiq.
Inshallah. Ya Rab, thank you very much. Inshallah, we'll see you again very soon, and we may have some collaborations between Bank Nizwa Oman and also Nadil Iqtisad Al-Islami. We may also conduct a training, maybe, or workshop, or any conference in future, inshallah.
On climate change?
Yeah. As you are
Inshallah,
having
yeah. It's a good topic. It's the topic to talk about. It's the topic to talk about.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. And regarding the certificates, who ask about the certificates, yeah, if you send the registration form to our email, inshallah, we'll send back to you the certificates. And it's already certified by the University of Kuwait, Faculty of Sharia and Islamic Studies. So inshallah, you will receive the certificates very soon. So with that, we conclude today's session here. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept these efforts and time. May Allah bless us all. May Allah reward us all. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.